All right, so welcome to the McDaniel College's Art Department's Departmental Honors Exhibition, hosted by the Esther Pringley Rice Gallery. This is our virtual exhibition. Obviously, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we can't have our exhibitions in person yet. So our two departmental honors students have taken photos of their work, and we are showing their exhibition virtually. So before we start with the questions to our two participants, I just wanted to walk any viewer through the Rice Gallery website so you can find the exhibition. So if you go to the homepage of the Esther Pringley Rice Gallery, which is just www.estherpringleyricegallery.com, you'll see the current exhibition. And if you want to check out our artists' resumes, Quinn and Julia's resumes are here. You click that and it'll bring up their resumes. Otherwise, you click the current exhibition and it brings you to Reconstruct and Memorialize, Identity and Impressions, which is the departmental honors exhibition for Quinn Nguyen and Julia Robinson. So then you can click on Quinn's portfolio. You can read her artist statement, scroll down, and then all of her artwork is below. If you click on one image, it brings them up. You can zoom and escape out of that, and you can hit the next button to see the artwork that way rather than scrolling down. So you go back, and then you go below, and there's Julia's artwork. So the same thing. We can either scroll down and look through the body of work, or we can click on one image and hit the next arrows. But I'm going to go back to the page where their exhibition begins, and I will introduce our two artists and start asking our questions. So well, first, I guess I'm Stephen Pearson. I'm chair of the art department and the director of the Esther Pringley Rice Gallery. Our two artists in our departmental honors exhibition are Quinn Nguyen, who graduated in December, actually, but is participating in the honors exhibition now, and Julia Robinson, who is graduating in May. So welcome, Quinn and Julia. And just a brief description of what it means to be departmental honors. Students have to meet the criteria set forward by the college for departmental honors, and that's they have to have a 3.0 overall GPA and a 3.5 GPA in their major. So both Julia and Quinn met those requirements. Then they have to submit an honors project to the department chair and describe what they're going to do with that project and what their goals are and who they will work with. And both Quinn and Julia worked with me for their projects. So I'm going to start the questions now. Are you two ready?
Sounds good.
All right. So these questions are for both of you. You can either both answer, or one can take the lead. It's really up to you. So the first question is, how did you come up with the title for your honors exhibition? The title again was Reconstruct and Memorialize, Identity and Impressions.
Julia came up with the title. She says like the concept of both of our works deals with memorialization, reconstructing identity, impressions, and fragments.
Yeah, it kind of started out just kind of like brainstorming similarities between our works and like finding, I guess, where there was like crossover. And we realized there was like a lot of stuff with like fragments, impressions, and both of our work also dealt with like identity and kind of taking materials and like for Quinn, like solidifying these materials, and for me, kind of like solidifying like memories. And her work also deals with memory as well. So it was, yeah, just kind of finding those commonalities.
So it was really, a lot of thought looking at each other's work and trying to break down in, very minimal amount of words, a description of what you two do.
Hmm.
So what made you want to pursue departmental honors?
I can start. I guess for me, I saw it as like an opportunity to kind of start a new body of work that I had gotten interested in from like one of our other classes. I think it was the like concepts classes, and we had started talking about like place and identity a lot. Um, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to explore like those ideas. And yeah, when you reached out to me, I thought, why not? It'd be exciting and a new opportunity.
Good. Quinn?
I wanted to challenge myself into creating some work that's not really assigned to me. So going away from like assignments and stuff like that and coming up with something out of it.
Sorry, the cat's going crazy at my window, so I just texted my son to let the cat in. Um, when you proposed the departmental honors project, obviously you both were already in advanced studio and working on your own body of work.
Right.
Did your honors work veer far from the art you were pursuing in that class, or did it follow a similar or parallel thread?
My work falls like really similar to what I've been doing a little bit, but it still is kind of connected together. Like all my, what's it called? The one with the printing, with the stamps. So I did the stamps in the beginning, like from my advanced studio, but from my honors, I took those stamps and then I start to, what's like making prints out of it and then working more into it, like cutting it out and stitching it.
And now your work, and I'll get to Julia with the same question, but your work originally was the body of work you were doing in Advanced Studio was started in the fall of 2019, so well before the pandemic. How did your work shift once we went to remote learning? Did it follow a different path, but still remained true to the original content or idea?
Um, so when the COVID hits, I guess I'm mostly in my room, and I guess like I got inspired by my family at home, so I started doing videos and recording the sounds at home. But I guess it's kind of similar a little bit with it deals with family. I guess it's kind of a little bit similar. Um,
But you started using maybe your family, the sounds of your family, the things around you, as the material that became part of the work, and you also, I guess, still played with the idea of process because your work is very heavy into process.
right.
So it was a process of collecting these ambient noises and the process of figuring out what to do with the leftover homework pages for your math class. So I do think there was a connection,
Mhm.
using the materials around you as your inspiration, which relates to your overall idea of taking everything that you have and treating it that like it has worth. All right, so Julia, same question. Did did your work veer far from your advanced studio work, or did it follow some kind of parallel thread?
I think it definitely followed a parallel thread. It was like very connected in that my like studio work was kind of drawing from like diary entries and like just going back to like that kind of when I was like growing up, just going back to that kind of era and not era, but you know, that time period in my life and just like um drawing from those experiences. And then the work that I'm started doing after that was more based on place. So like instead of drawing from like the diary entries or things like that, it was more drawing from like the actual physical places and like how I could represent those and like how those shape identity as well.
And now your departmental honors work, that was all done after the pandemic hit, right?
Yeah.
It was all done mostly this fall semester, I believe.
Yeah, it was a little bit I think it started like yeah, like late last year and then this year.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that, I've noticed a lot of artists who, during the pandemic have found inspiration in their immediate surroundings, because, we were quarantined for a period of time. So using what's available, like Quinn did. And I've seen a lot of artists doing the same thing. Yours, I think, was already looking to your immediate surroundings as inspiration or as fodder for your work. You were this body of work focuses on the places you grew up in, right?
Yeah, it's all based on like different houses. And one of the houses I was like staying in while making some of the work. But yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So then I would say place, you've kind of approached place as being integral to identity then.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. If you can recall, this goes to both of you, so whoever wants to take the question first. If you can recall, what studio classes, both traditional and digital, have you taken during your time here at McDaniel?
I can go first. I took perceptual drawing. I took ceramics, which I really enjoyed. I took drawing concepts, and I took a digital class. I forget the name of it, but it was a lot of like working with like Photoshop and like design and stuff like
Yeah,
that. So that was
probably digital imaging, maybe.
yeah, digital imaging. And then I also took color and art and design. Um, and I think another like life drawing type class that was kind of like perceptual drawing, but
And then obviously advanced studio.
right.
How about you, Quinn?
I remember taking our first class was the FYS class. Then I took watercolor, design one, printmaking. Um, Printmaking was fun. Digital and art and digital culture. Um, and then modern photography, ceramics, and of course advanced studio 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
And I think you took graphic design as well, did you? Graphic design one?
I think, yeah, graphic design 1.
Yeah. So both of you have had traditional and digital studio classes, and quite a wide range of media, which we'll get to the next question. That's the reason I wanted to ask this, because you did get to explore different mediums or media. Got to explore different media. And you both seem in your advanced studio work or your departmental honors work, you both seem to work in multiple media. What has led you to explore your ideas in such a variety of media? And do you have a favorite medium, or does it feel natural to just use the media that fits the idea?
When COVID hit, I couldn't access to many materials. I can only use like the materials that's available to me, such as like my devices and was it the ink that I brought home with me. Um, I guess that's it. But then my favorite medium is I guess like the printmaking ink because it's like a bit messy, but it's like really fun to work with. Um, and I don't really have a really particular favorite, but I really like the ink one.
Do you feel that it's just become kind of second nature to just not put yourself into a corner with the medium and just let the idea lead you to the medium that's going to work best?
When I'm working, I don't think, I just do it.
Okay. Julia, same question.
Yeah, I think I definitely let the idea kind of dictate the media. Um, I know like before I got to college, I had the kind of idea that I would need to kind of choose one media, or I would like go in, I would do like all paintings, like oil paintings, or all of one thing, and to just be really good at that one thing. But I was really happy when I started taking like advanced studio, and you kind of said like let your ideas kind of like play out however they need to in whatever way. So I think that for me, it's just whatever idea fits like the emotion that I'm trying to convey, and then also like it can be interesting to have kind of a contrast between the emotions you're trying to convey and like the medium. and that can add some interesting stuff as well. But I don't really know if I have a favorite media. I really have enjoyed doing like the collage stuff that I did this semester because I hadn't really done that before. But I think, yeah, anything new I always really enjoy doing. It's definitely
Yeah,
intuitive and like
yeah.
fun.
And as we look at your, we'll look at the work on the website. We'll see with both of you. You're both working in such a wide range. Like Julia, you've got clay sculptures, fiber resin cast sculptures, photographic collages, and then photos and hair uh, for one work, and then paper casting for one of the works as well. And in your work that's not in the show, but you're currently working on in Advanced Studio, you're doing embroidery and mixing embroidery and drawing. So quite a wide range. And Quinn, you've worked with yarn, bricks, mussel shells, plastic, resin, and then, like you said, printmaking. And an interesting thing about Quinn's work, and we'll see this as we look at the website, Quinn started making these little sculptures out of mussel shells and plastic. But then the sculptures themselves ended up, they kind of work as sculptures, but they also ended up becoming stamps for printmaking, which ended up making some beautiful prints. So even when you make art, sometimes you look at what you've made and find a way to use that for something else. So, and you did a video and a couple of digital pieces as well that we'll see when we look through, which will probably be with this next question. Your artist statements are displayed right before each of your digital portfolios in this virtual exhibition for visitors to read. But if they weren't, and a visitor asked you for a brief description of what your work was about, how would you answer them? Julia, you can go first.
I guess I would just talk about using the homes that I've lived in as a framework for like stages of my life and stages of like the development of like my identity. Um, and I guess just showing the relationship kind of how place can get a meaning from like what you kind of take out of it and what you put onto it, because it has like no really like meaning in itself, and then also how that meaning kind of forms like your own identity and just like the relationship between those two.
And so looking at place, we can see like this first piece is that collaged photographs, which reconstruct a view of a house you grew up in.
Yeah, and the kind of figure off to the side is I took outlines of myself in all of these like childhood photos, and then like outlined all of them and then put them together to kind of create this like vague looking form to kind of show like how identity when you're younger like isn't really formed at all, and it's very like yeah, just not as formed as when you're older, and how that kind of interacts with the place that I was in, by using the photos to show like to make up the figure.
And so these are all photos from that house or just from your childhood?
They're all from that house.
That house. Sorry.
Some of them are of the house and some of them are from like the area around it.
And then in this one, is there a light inside this prison?
Yeah, it's inside of the resin. There is like a paper model of another house that I lived in. You can,
Which you can see it right here.
yeah. And then for this one, I kind of wanted to show like the negative space, kind of inspired by Rachel Whitehurst's work with negative space.
Wait, Rachel White-Reed.
White-Reed, thank you. Yeah, her work with negative space, and kind of showing for this house, it was kind of like I didn't spend very much time inside of the house. It was more about like being outside and exploring like the woods around it and the area around it. So that was kind of like more of a development of like my own identity and kind of centering it on like the world outside of the house.
Well, it's really interesting too when you encase that house in this fiberglass resin brick. It says a lot about compartmentalizing memories and trying to store these ideas of memories. It really becomes kind of this poignant piece when you think about and look at what's actually there. Once you get beyond the actual object and you notice the house inside, that calls to mind so many different ideas of place and memory and even, ownership of that place, within yourself. It actually makes me oddly think of a old Woody Allen movie where, and I don't even remember the movie, but it's set in the future. I saw it as a kid. I don't think I've seen it as an adult, but this guy owns a piece of property, and it's a tiny little piece of grass that's about the size of this block, and he just holds on to that little piece of property. That's the only thing I remember from that movie. But for some reason, seeing this encased in that calls to mind that notion of owning something and holding it dear. And that's what this does, especially with putting the house in. And then this is another one of your houses with a tea light inside.
Yeah, it's the same house as the first collage.
Okay.
This one I kind of I think this was the first work that I did, but it was kind of I wanted to show kind of the house doesn't exist anymore, so it was kind of a reconstruction of like how I remember it, because I don't really have any. I used some photos to kind of reconstruct it, but just kind of showing like how it's not really entirely accurate of how a house like might look. It's as close as I could get it to be, but kind of showing how like the space changes in your mind, and like your meanings of it change over time. And even if that place doesn't exist anymore, like physically it exists kind of like in my mind, and then making it into a sculpture is a way to kind of memorialize it and show that.
Yeah, and then this is the piece that you finished most recently, and this one uses a lot of media from clay to hair and photos. Can you tell us a brief description of what's happening in this?
Yeah, so this is the most recent house that I lived in. It's just my room in the house. And for this one, I kind of wanted to focus on, since this was the last work, I wanted to kind of show like coming into my own identity, and to show that I wanted to use like parts of my body. That's what all the photos are. Everything is like either like made up of photos of my hair or my teeth or my eyes
Yeah,
or
there's teeth right there.
yeah. So just kind of showing how my identity ties back to the places that I've lived, and then also kind of showing the body as a place that you live, just as much as any like home that you live in.
Yeah, very nice and very, good use of material. I like the use of the hair and that notion that the body is also a place. I don't know if we often think of it that way. And then this last piece, can you explain what you did with this?
Yeah, so this was for one house that I lived in pretty briefly, and I don't really remember much of it. So I felt like I couldn't do like a reconstruction of the house in the same way. So I thought that I just kind of wrote down a bunch of memories that I had from that house, and kind of took objects from those memories in order to make sculptures out of those objects to kind of memorialize the things that stuck out to me, rather than something that I didn't really remember fully. So the objects are kind of stand-ins for the house, and I used paper because I was inspired by Nguyen doing all of the paper making, and I was like, oh, I have to do something with that. It looked really cool. So it was really cool to be able to have that dynamic and see what you're doing and play off of that. So I was like, yeah, I want to do something to kind of show the and then just kind of using that material because it's like so light and ghostly kind of, and I didn't want to paint it or anything because I wanted it to kind of show that like the memories are kind of foggy, and that they're just kind of like impressions of what was actually there, and like what I took from that house in that time of my life.
Yeah, and it's, the limitations of the virtual exhibition doesn't allow us to see this. Like, if we saw this in a gallery, I think we would really feel that kind of ephemeral or fragile quality of these, being made out of paper and not having hard defined edges. So I think that, seeing them in the physical space would be so much different than seeing a picture. So it's unfortunate that we can't see these in person. So Quinn, same question to you. I'll reread the question for you. and I'll click on your gloves there. So your artist statement, as we see here, is displayed right before your digital portfolio in this virtual exhibition so people can read it. But if it wasn't there and a visitor asked you for a brief description of what your work was about, how would you answer them?
I would say I got my inspiration from my grandmother, her saying rice is gold. How I interpret that is like using like things wisely and being able to like reuse it. And so most of my materials I gather and then I find a way um, to put it in display. For example, like I crush mushroom shells, like mix into resin, putting it into soap rectangular mold, and then using the final product as stamps, and I can be able to use it to display it.
So these were the casts you made in a soap mold, you just said, which made them all kind of similar size, but because you're using so many different materials, each of them prints so differently. What gave you the idea to print them after you made them into sculptures? How did you go from sculptures to, let me try to ink them up and see what happens?
I think I got the idea from printmaking with the edge ink and the surface from the linoleum. How you print the, I guess like how you press the surface of it, and then you can get the paper out of it. So I thought like, oh, maybe I can do a little bit something with the surface of the crushed mushroom shells or the rice. Like I tried to test on the paper and it came out as a weird shape. But if I keep doing it the same thing, it sometimes like doesn't do the same, doesn't ink the same because like the um I guess the ink kind of changed the surface of how much ink you put into the mold is either light or really dark. So just like
And,
how
and did you use a roller, a brayer to put it on?
no, I just use a lot of ink.
What, now, how did you put the ink on the sculpture pieces themselves? Did you use a roller
I
to,
use my hand.
oh, you used your hand, okay. Um, and then just rub the surface and then print it. And then, so you did quite a few of these prints, and here you're combining one of the prints with uh, inking from your, cleaning your roller basically, right? Is that how this started, or what were you thinking with this part?
So once I finished stamping, I have like those excess ink, and I thought it would be a waste to like discard it or just leave it to dry. So I scoop them up and then start rolling it on the paper.
And
And
quite a few sheets of this, right?
yeah, a lot of them. I forgot. I guess like I didn't take the whole picture downstairs because I think I have more, and I forgot to put it in. But that's just one of them. So I
And so
once I
would you,
ink it, oh,
I was gonna say, would you put the ink on the roller and then roll the roller till it started to dry up and then re-ink
yes.
it, or how did
Yep.
the process?
I just keep going over it, but some of them is just faded because I kind of use all the ink.
Okay. I
So
like the pairing of the two together. I think that's a nice touch. And then this, you mentioned the other day when we were talking, that this is still a work in progress, right?
yes,
And this is again just utilizing scraps of things that gathered around as you did different prints,
right.
and it's just trying to layer them and find a way to resolve the piece, which I think is how you approach this painting, but this actually, I think, got to a resolved finish.
Yep.
And then these were the pieces that you did when you went to remote learning. And we won't play them all, but there's three where you have floor plans of your house, right?
Right.
And from those rooms, if you click on these, it brings you to a video. From those rooms, you recorded the sounds that you couldn't get away from. So let's see if they'll play. So I thought this was a really nice idea of finding a way to work with what was available to you, instead of thinking about all the noise that families make when you're trying to do your work. You thought, well, all this noise that my family makes can become part of my work,
Yeah.
which relates to what you did prior with the mussel shells that you were collecting, the plastic bottles you were collecting, all these things that were around you and could be considered as just detritus, or just in this case like ambient noise. You found a way to collect it and use it to create work. And there's 3 of those. So if viewers want to click on those and listen, they're 3 minutes long, or 2 minutes and 35 seconds long. And then this one is, Julia had mentioned she was inspired by your paper making, but you had a math class where you kept crumpling up paper and throwing it on the floor in your room, and again decided, instead of just putting that in the trash, to use it like that saying that your grandmother said, rice is gold, everything has its own value. So you found a way to give it more value, and you recycled it and started creating sheets of paper, right?
Yes.
Do you want to talk about this process or how you learned it?
Uh,
Probably YouTube.
where did I learn it? I think I just watched some videos of I guess a girl blending a paper. So I thought like, oh, I have a bunch of, paper lying on the floor. So I thought like I could do the same thing as she did. But her paper turned out really nice because it was like she wasn't reusing the paper or anything, but like she bought the paper. Um, but since I have a bunch of paper laying around, all I just bought was like the tools, like I think you can see. Uh, yeah.
Julia, did you end up with the same kind of tools when you?
I think mine is like similar, but it doesn't have the same kind of grid pattern. Mine is more. It looks kind of like a screen printing screen. It might actually. It might just be a screen printing screen. But yeah, it's very similar, and same process of blending it up.
Nice. Well, what I enjoy about this is that in a traditional advanced studio class, students are working in the same room, they're talking to each other, you get this kind of community of artists, and sometimes you're inspiring each other. But even in COVID, you two were meeting with me via Zoom, sharing what you were doing for the Departmental Honors Project, and so there was still that ability to get inspired by each other, even though it was much smaller and much more contained. But at least something good came out of those meetings. And then this is what Quinn did with the paper that she made. And it looks like you created kind of a hanging installation, sewing them together.
Right.
Nice. And then this is kind of your earlier work that maybe even led to some of the advanced studio stuff. Can you tell us about this project, which led to these other brick?
That project was the 3D one that I did with you. That led with a lot of bricks. I forgot I had a lot of brick work that was like inspired by that. Because I have the wired one, and then I have that one, the wired one, and I have one more. I think the phone one. I think I don't know. I did a lot with
Oh
the
yeah,
brick.
yeah, and the 3D class. So it was a project where we do transformative texture. So it's taking an object and giving it a new texture by putting multiples of a different form on it. So you use this really soft uh, yarn to create this cuddly brick. But if you actually pick it up, it's still heavy, hard brick. So this is kind of your first, I think, step into this, using these things that could be looked at as throwaways, and then you just started trying to see what else you could stick to a brick. Yeah. And I think that leads to the end of the portfolio. So we'll go back up and stop sharing the screen. So I only have a few more questions left. After looking at your work, what led each of you in the direction your work is going? Was it a reading, a liberal arts class, an artist you saw whose work inspired you, or maybe a combination of these?
Um, so I guess I was inspired by the was it Ai Weiwei? He's like a Chinese contemporary artist. His work deals with installation, architectural, and photograph. But like I was mostly inspired by his documentary. What's it called? Uh, that deals with climate change and people are forced from their homes. Um, he did a lot of works that deal with the people. He takes people from the seas and took a picture of it and documents it. I guess I was inspired by the backpacks of how many children's like were lost, and they gather their backpacks together and then they showcase like how many kids were lost during the earthquake in I guess China. Yeah, so.
Yeah, there was an exhibition of that work at the Hirshhorn Museum a few years ago, and it was a really powerful piece. That, and there was a huge gallery where he had these rebars, these metal rebars that are supposed to be reinforcing the concrete to hold buildings up. And I forget what if the purpose of the rebar, it was a piece called Fault, and there was a line down the center of the rebar installation that looked like a fault line in an earthquake, as you know, there where the tectonic plates shift. But I think I don't want to, don't quote me, but I'm trying to remember if he was using the rebar because the concrete wasn't reinforced with the rebar, or it was not quality rebar. But something about the construction of the school where the children were made it susceptible to falling during the earthquake. So that was and there's this connection where he's using the things around him, finding those things to make these poignant works, which you can see leading to you trying to use the things around you to create work. So Julia, same question. What led you in the direction your work is going? Was it a reading, a liberal arts class, an artist you saw whose work inspired you, or maybe a combination?
For me, it was the class that I took with you on drawing concepts, and the last chapter that we did was on place, and I actually ended up doing something that was all about like body in place, and doing that kind of made me think about like physical places as well, like homes that I had lived in, and I was kind of inspired by like that reading to kind of pursue work that was similar to what I've been doing in advanced studio, but choosing a different like thing to focus on, or a different like concept behind it. Because before I had been doing this stuff with like diaries, and I thought place would be another interesting way to explore identity.
Yeah, and that reading comes from a textbook called Themes of Contemporary Art, which I use a lot in a lot of classes, but I really like how they break down what's going on in the contemporary art world into these seven basic themes, basically, and but look at how artists are approaching those themes in so many different ways, so many different media, and across global artists working. So it's not just artists in the U.S. or whatever. So it's a good text, and glad the reading was inspirational. What was the best part of studying art or being a studio major? Oh, there better be something.
I can start.
Okay.
It was getting to explore like all these different medias, and then like just like I was really excited for like ceramics and just classes like that, and then kind of just like getting to explore everything that I had been wanting to do before I came to college, and then also having that kind of like community of like people um, like other art majors and people taking art classes. It was always really good to hear like the feedback and get inspired by like what other people were doing. Yeah.
I agree with Julia. Like taking many classes, like art classes, and exploring them. And I also, I guess, like artists coming in and out of the gallery to what's it called, to exhibit their works kind of like motivate me a little bit, like, oh, seeing how they graduated, grad school, college, and they were able to make artwork and then showcase it afterwards is really inspiration, you know.
Was there anything surprising about studying art that you didn't expect before coming here? Like maybe like what art can do, or themes art can address. Was it different than what you expected coming out of high school?
Yes. I just thought, like, um for high school, I didn't really do much in high school. We didn't really learn much about, like, all we learned was like the principle of art, and they gave us some tasks, like do some collages and stuff like that. But like in college, I guess it's more broad. It's expand a little bit more. It's like, oh, okay. So you're learning about themes. How can you interpret it, and then you know, how can you explore a little bit more on themes or plays, or uh, what's it called, and memory, like so we just oh goodness, where am I going with this? So we learned a lot more in college.
About maybe taking your art into more of a depth rather than just dipping your toes into an idea.
Right.
Yeah. Julia, how about you?
Yeah, I think definitely what Quinn said with like exploring different themes and stuff. I think definitely in high school, art was more about like exploring different medias and kind of getting really good at those. But I think studying in college kind of gave me the opportunity to like learn how to represent different ideas and like how to convey an idea without just like saying it, or without just being really overt with it, I guess. And that was always like a challenge, and I always found that really interesting, and just like realizing the depths of things that you can express through art and how that can be kind of like a cathartic experience as well.
Now, do each of you think that maybe studying art at a liberal arts institution helped you think about art differently than if you were just like studying just art as art? How did the liberal arts affect the way you approached it?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think definitely taking other classes along with my art classes definitely gave me a lot of room to explore different ideas and constantly be bringing in like things from. I took a lot of like psychology classes, and that was always really helpful for working like with identity and things like that. So it was always there was always a lot to like draw from and learn from, just like outside of like technical like how to paint, how to sculpt, things like that. So it was very helpful to have those other influences.
Quinn?
I learned, yeah, just like what Julia says. I learned from I guess, like the artist Ai Weiwei. Like I learned from what's it called, communication class. We watched a documentary, and that's where I learned about the artist. So
Oh,
that's where I drew the inspiration from.
nice. Um, what was the most challenging part about being a studio arts major?
Coming up with some ideas.
Is that it?
Coming up with ideas and how to attack, and how to use it into your work. How does it like fit in, or does it make sense if it's in your work? Because I have a lot of work that doesn't go into the work. So, so figuring out how to make the artwork and being able to use it is really difficult.
You glitched for a second. I think you were saying you had a lot of work that didn't end up in the exhibition, something like that.
Yeah, and yes, and it's like I guess it's challenging to make artwork that fits into your work. So even if you make a lot of work, like,
Yeah.
oh, it doesn't look nice.
Julia, how about you? What was the most challenging part of being a studio major?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The having to kind of having all these different themes that I wanted to like explore and then kind of having to choose a path was difficult. But I found that in the end, all the themes that I was thinking about ended up just like tying together anyways. So that was always difficult at first, but just like an interesting process. And I also I found it difficult when I had an idea for a project and I like tried to execute it, but it just didn't turn out the way that I wanted to. So that was always frustrating. But always learned from those experiences and was able to do something different.
Yeah, I went to a conference once where we called that failing forward. Just learning from those mistakes and moving, into the next thing that hopefully is more successful. I was expecting to hear something maybe about, time and time management and with studio classes and how much time goes into making the work.
Yeah, I did think about that too. Didn't want to give too many negatives though.
Yeah. Well, you find the time. But all right, and then the last question I have for you two: what are your plans following graduation?
Um, so for me, I originally was intending on going into art therapy and going to grad school for that. Currently, I am thinking about taking a year off or maybe more than that just to kind of save up money. And I'm also considering a lot of other career options as well. But I definitely know that like I want to do something working with people. And I always want to have art be like a really big part of my life. So I know that no matter what career I have, it's going to be really important to me. But yeah, not exactly sure to answer the question,
Yeah.
but
Well, from now till May, I will keep saying that you should apply to graduate school for an MFA. You can listen to me or ignore me all you want, but I'm going to keep saying it. Quinn, how about you?
I'm planning to go to grad school
For a what?
for art.
Yeah, an MFA in studio art. And where did you get accepted?
Get accepted to American University.
You don't have to be embarrassed by that. It's a good thing. Yeah, American University for an MFA in studio art. So that's exciting. Um, thank you both for answering all of these questions. I think you answered them well. Uh, Again, I hope people who watch this will take the time to look through the virtual exhibition, and in the future, hopefully we get to see their work in galleries around the world. But hopefully we just see more of your work. So thank you for taking the time to make the work and share it with us.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I am going to stop recording.